The concept of metaphysics. From Heraclitus's perspective on wisdom, sometime later the systematic beginning of philosophy occurs with Aristotle. Aristotle's important work on this subject is Proto-Philosophia, that is, metaphysics. Metaphysics, since its first definition, has been at the center of philosophy, dealing with questions such as what is existence? What kinds of beings exist? Metaphysical topics have been addressed by many philosophers throughout the history of philosophy. Although it became clear what exactly it was about with Aristotle, metaphysical topics were already being discussed before him. Metaphysics, with its broad perspective on the essence and generality of existence, is distinguished from natural research. The concept of metaphysics. Metaphysics is one of the topics that philosophers have thought about the most throughout the history of philosophy. Sometimes seen as the center of philosophy, sometimes subject to criticism, metaphysics. Despite all this, it has never lost its value. Among the reasons why metaphysics is always on the agenda, on the one hand, the importance of the problems it deals with never fades. On the other hand, both its scope and definition have been constantly debated throughout the history of philosophy. As far as we know, the term metaphysics was first used by Andronicus of Rhodes, who collected the works of Aristotle in the 1st century BC. Andronicus, while organizing Aristotle's works, used the term ta meta ta physica to refer to the writings that came after his work called physics. In fact, Aristotle called the subjects in the work we know today as metaphysics as first philosophy. Aristotle classifies the knowledge that people acquire according to how it is acquired. According to him, the first and most direct form of knowledge for humans is knowledge that comes through the senses. Aristotle sees this type of knowledge as a lower form of knowledge. However, humans have the ability to acquire knowledge at more advanced stages, beyond what they gather from their senses. The first of these stages requires the use of memory, which is the stage of experience. Knowledge gained through experience is the knowledge of individuals and enables the acquisition of practical rules about a subject without knowing the reasons behind them. Above experiential knowledge lies artistic knowledge. Art does not provide an understanding of individual things, but rather knowledge of the general. Artistic knowledge is based on general principles and is the knowledge of practical rules. Therefore, artistic knowledge is superior to experiential knowledge. However, both types of knowledge are necessary. Above all these types of knowledge lies science, which is the pure knowledge of causes. Science, unlike art, is not aimed at practical purposes, but at knowing for the sake of knowing. Therefore, it is the highest form of knowledge and provides the highest level of knowledge. We can fully know something when we know it through its causes and principles. What provides us with this kind of knowledge is wisdom. The Greeks gave this knowledge the name episteme, which is a type of evidence-based knowledge. However, the ultimate knowledge of principles cannot be based on the events of the physical world. They are called principles precisely because they cannot be grounded. Since these principles are beyond all events in the world, they can only be accessed by a kind of intuitive power. Therefore, the knowledge of principles is based on nous, not episteme. Together with episteme, they constitute wisdom, the most comprehensive and difficult knowledge to attain. Metaphysics, unlike specific sciences, does not focus on a particular field of existence, but deals with existence as it is, investigating the principles related to existence itself. According to Aristotle, metaphysics is an investigation that precedes the theory about the physical and aims to obtain the knowledge that will form its foundations. In this case, physical research on facts will at some point lead to metaphysical research. Because a physics that is put forward without metaphysics being discovered will be an incomplete effort left hanging in the air. Aristotle's research begins with the physical, but acquiring in-depth knowledge about the physical leads us to a metaphysical investigation into its nature. The claims of metaphysics about what lies beyond the reality we experience are evaluated within that metaphysical system, because, as we mentioned before, every metaphysical system is consistent within itself. In this case, it is not possible to say which of the claims of sometimes contradictory metaphysics is really true. The critical understanding in Kant approaches metaphysics not from within its own systems, but from a structure outside of metaphysics, from the study of determining the field of human knowledge. Once the field of human knowledge is determined, it can be clearly stated whether metaphysics is possible, and if so, what its scope is. As a result of his efforts to determine the limits of knowledge, Hume identified two fields of knowledge. The first of these are the problems of fact that fall within the research area of the sciences and the relationships of ideas that are the field of mathematics. Propositions that describe the relationships of ideas do not say anything about facts. They only express what is already present in the concept they are dealing with. On the other hand, they are certain in a way that leaves no room for probability, because they are an indication of the principle of non-contradiction, and thinking about their opposites leads to contradiction. It cannot be said that these kinds of expressions, which Kant would later call analytic propositions, are informative expressions, because they consist of repeating the same thing in the sense that something already existing in the concept is repeated in the proposition. Expressions that express problems of fact, on the other hand, are possible propositions about reality based on sensory experiences. These are propositions that express something that is not already present in the concept being addressed. The value of such statements in terms of knowledge is related to the fact that they are derived from experience. Since they are statements about facts, their possibilities of verification are also provided by comparing them with facts. Since contradictory statements can be as true as themselves, they do not express absolute truth. Propositions that express problems of fact are not certain, but carry a possible truth. Hume argues that mathematics propositions about the relationships of ideas and experimental sciences propositions about problems of fact are true or meaningful in terms of knowledge, while propositions outside of these are meaningless. The statements of metaphysics, on the other hand, express neither the relationships of ideas nor problems of fact. In this case, metaphysical statements are neither true in terms of knowledge, nor do they contain any meaning. Natural sciences also aim to acquire knowledge about facts. However, although natural sciences are similar in terms of their effort to acquire knowledge about facts and to do so from a scientific perspective, they differ in terms of the subjects they study. Each examines the part of the facts in the world that falls within its field, and does so from a particular point of view required by the subject it examines. For example, the facts studied by physics, chemistry, zoology and botany, which we can count among the natural sciences, and their approaches to these facts are different from each other. Therefore, each of them deals with a certain group of facts, from a certain angle and in certain ways. They also leave out many aspects. Metaphysics, on the other hand, is the investigation of principles. One of the main points where metaphysics differs from natural sciences is its attitude towards the effort to acquire general and comprehensive knowledge. It is not directed towards this or that aspect of a particular fact or group of facts, but towards understanding the universe as a whole. It aims to address the universe as a whole in a complete way. In this case, metaphysics differs from natural sciences in terms of generality. Metaphysics is the investigation of principles. One of the main points where metaphysics differs from natural sciences is its attitude towards the effort to acquire general and comprehensive knowledge. It is not directed towards this or that aspect of a particular fact or group of facts, but towards understanding the universe as a whole. It aims to address the universe as a whole in a complete way. In this case, metaphysics differs from natural sciences in terms of generality. Metaphysics can be understood as the activity of investigating the most general, most inclusive principles relating to the universe as a whole, not to this or that fact. everything in the universe, as well as the universe itself as a whole, must be subject to these general principles investigated by metaphysics. Metaphysics can be understood as the activity of investigating the most general, most inclusive principles relating to the universe as a whole, not to this or that fact. Everything in the universe, as well as the universe itself as a whole, must be subject to these general principles investigated by metaphysics. The attempt to reveal the most comprehensive and general principles is also related to the effort to have a holistic knowledge of the universe, to understand it as a whole. Therefore, we can also define metaphysics as the effort to know the universe in its entirety. Since these most general, most inclusive principles are also related to essence, their investigation has sometimes been understood as an effort to reveal what existence is. Metaphysics, which investigates what existence is, has tried to achieve this by uncovering the first principles of existence, or the ultimate undeniable truths about existence. When metaphysics is considered as the effort to know what existence is, that is, its essence, it has also been evaluated as the effort to understand beyond the physical. Because when we talk about the essence of visible existence, we are directed to something beyond the physical world. The goal is to reach the ultimate reality beyond the visible, the non-relative. The method is to reach the knowledge of what lies beyond it through a critical examination of what is visible. The classic questions of metaphysics are: how is the universe structured as a whole? What is the essence of existence? What is the structure of what is beyond the physical? What is a thing that is everything deeply? These kinds of questions that philosophers ask about the field of metaphysics vary according to the terms and structures used by different metaphysical systems. Metaphysics' orientation towards principles that encompass the universe is also reflected in its questions. These are questions aimed at a radical investigation that will leave nothing out. The answers given to these kinds of questions and the new questions that arise have diversified and enriched metaphysics throughout the history of philosophy. However, while some of the metaphysical systems within this diversity stand side by side in a way that supports and complements each other, some have come face to face in a way that completely rejects and annihilates each other. Long chains of proofs that strengthen one's own argument while refuting the opposite view have followed each other, and the subject has become inextricable. As Kant also stated, this diversity has made philosophy complicated after a point. What is considered true in one metaphysical system has been considered true in another metaphysical system that is the exact opposite. Since metaphysics' research extends beyond visible physical reality, the results of this research have often been evaluated within that metaphysical system. However, once the presuppositions of these metaphysical systems are accepted, one can prove the view they put forward, and the other can prove the exact opposite of this view with the same rigor and care, so there has been no way of saying which of these results is actually true. While the history of philosophy harbors such metaphysical diversity, almost every metaphysician has claimed that it is their own metaphysical system that achieves the goal of knowing the universe in its entirety. Indeed, whether they explain the universe with conflicting or reconcilable views, there is one common feature in almost all metaphysical systems. None of them have doubted that their answers provide the basic true knowledge about the whole of the universe. Metaphysical systems are often centered around a view about understanding the universe as a whole. The entire system is structured to be consistent with this view. Whether metaphysics is knowledge is one of the most debated topics about metaphysics. One of the main differences between metaphysics and natural science is that the propositions of natural science can be empirically verified. There is a possibility to clearly demonstrate the accuracy of a proposition put forward by natural sciences. They can be true or false. For a statement, or let's say a claim, to have value in terms of being knowledge, it must be verifiable in the sense that it can be verified or falsified. This condition also applies to the claims made by metaphysics. If we are to say that metaphysics is a type of knowledge, it must first be said that it can be verified in terms of its truth value. However, we have no way of saying whether the main claims made by metaphysical systems are true or false. For this reason, throughout the history of philosophy, no consensus has been reached on the verification of metaphysical expressions through verification. Sometimes the consistency between the expressions of the system, sometimes the conformity to a certain understanding, and sometimes being accepted by a certain group, have been the criteria chosen for verification. Many metaphysical systems have brought their own verification mechanisms with them. Throughout the history of philosophy, on the one hand, the metaphysical claims themselves have been discussed, and on the other hand, how these claims can be verified has been discussed. Since each system brings with it the mechanism to support its own claims, even though very different claims are put forward, the question of which one is really the most accurate has never lost its importance. One of the main topics of metaphysics, the ultimate reality, which is assumed to be beyond the physical world, is beyond our limits of knowing. Therefore, we have no way of saying whether the claims made about this area are true or false. The concepts of metaphysics have no meaning in terms of being subject to our experiences. The only valid source of human knowledge is impressions. In this case, the investigation of whether a word is meaningful or not should be carried out within the framework of the question of from which impression that word is derived. If no corresponding impression can be given for the word used, then the word is meaningless. Such a radical analysis of metaphysical problems will show that they are meaningless and therefore unsolvable.